How to score the MCHAT-RF. We will cover all of the information needed to score the modified checklist for autism in toddlers revised with follow-up. The two parts of the MCHAT-RF, how to score the initial screen, how to conduct the follow-up flowcharts, and where you can find more information about the MCHAT-RF and autism spectrum disorder screening. The modified checklist for autism in toddlers revised with follow-up is a two-part screen. It includes an initial questionnaire and follow-up flowcharts. The first part is the MCHAT-R, which contains 20 yes or no questions. The second part of the MCHAT-RF is a set of follow-up flowcharts, which are associated with each of the initial questions of the MCHAT-R. These follow-up flowcharts were introduced to help reduce false positives. The initial screen, the MCHAT-R, is 20 yes or no questions. Each question is worth 1 point. A question's response is considered at risk and adds 1 point to the initial sum score if a parent or caregiver says yes on items 2, 5, or 12, or if they answer no to any of the other items. To get the initial sum score, you sum or add the number of at-risk items for the initial score. A helpful tip is to make sure to check and score the reverse scored items first. So looking through to see if a caregiver answered yes on 2, 5, or 12 first, before looking to see if they answered no to any of the other questions. For the example here, we look to see if yes was answered for question 2, which it has, and therefore adds 1 point to the initial sum score. From there, we look to see if the caregiver answered yes on questions 5 and 12, which they did not. Then we look to see if the caregiver answered no on any other items. In this case, the caregiver answered no to questions 8 and 18, which add 1 point for each question. This brings us to an initial sum score of 3. What do you do with this initial sum score? Or in our example, with an initial sum score of 3. We have developed a useful flowchart that helps guide you through what should happen next, depending upon the initial sum score. First, we will cover what happens next when the initial score indicates a low or high risk of ASD. Then discuss the process when an initial score indicates moderate risk. If the initial sum score is 0, 1, or 2, this means that the child is at low risk for autism spectrum disorder currently. You do not need to complete the follow-up flowcharts. You can discuss the results with the family and rescreen at the next recommended well-child visit, or if you or the parent or caregiver raise concerns around autism spectrum disorder. If the initial sum score is between 8 and 20, this means that the child is at high risk for autism spectrum disorder or other developmental disorder currently. You do not need to complete the follow-up flowcharts. The guidance in this case is to refer to early intervention and for full diagnostic evaluation immediately. If the initial score is between 3 and 7, this means the child is currently at moderate risk for ASD or other developmental disorders, and more information is needed. You need to complete the follow-up flowcharts that match the initial at-risk questions. Once you have completed the necessary follow-up flowcharts, if the score is still 2 or more, then the same guidance applies as the high-risk initial score. You will need to refer to early intervention and for full diagnostic evaluation immediately. However, if the score is 0 or 1, you do not need to make these referrals and can follow the guidance for a low-risk initial score. This means screening again at age 24 months, or if you or the caregiver raise concerns about ASD potential. How to complete the follow-up flowcharts of the MCHAT RF. First, make sure to use the follow-up flowcharts that match the at-risk questions from the initial screen. The purpose of the flowcharts is to provide more opportunities to find evidence for typical developmental responses and reduce false positives. Given that you only need to use flowcharts if the score is between 3 and 7, the maximum number of flowcharts you would need to complete is 7. To use the flowcharts, start at the top, which typically repeats or rephrases the at-risk question from the MCHAT-R. Follow the directions, asking the parent or caregiver each question the flowchart indicates to a clear quote, pass or fail indicator. The MCHAT RF does use pass or fail language, but we do not recommend using this language when discussing results with families. You can also track which flowcharts have been, quote, passed or failed on the follow-up scoring sheet. Once 2 flowcharts indicate risk for ASD or, quote, fail, you do not need to complete the other flowcharts from the initial at-risk questions. If the score is 2 or more, or once 2 flowcharts indicate risk for ASD or, quote, fail, you will need to refer to early intervention and for a full diagnostic evaluation. A tip when going through flowcharts with a parent or caregiver. Often families will say, well, that happens sometimes. It is important to ask clarifying questions like, do you think it is more yes or more no? Here is where you can find more information on the MCHAT RF and autism screening. Check out the resources linked below for information on autism spectrum disorder, the MCHAT RF, and more, including our autism training page, which is a part of the Developmental Screening online toolkit, the Louisiana Medicaid Bulletin on Reimbursement for Autism, General Development, and Perinatal Depression Screening, and the MCHAT RF website where you can download the manual and find more information from the creators. You can also check out our videos on the basics of the MCHAT RF and using developmental screening resource guides with families, which we recommend using when a screen indicates a need for further evaluation or services.